This conference will now be recorded.
And now we call for the order of the meeting of our MRVT for Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. I call order. I look for approval of the agenda.
So moved, Zeman.
Okay. Is there a
Graham, second.
Graham second? All right, any more discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 How'd I have a roll call this third thing?
Mr. Chair, in effect, we've done roll call already and we can see or hear all the folks. So I think we're set to go, Mr. Chair, on that one.
Excellent. Let's look for approval of the minutes and disbursements. I'll take one at a time. I'll take the approval of the minutes from September 15th, 2020 of our regular meeting.
So moved, Sullivan.
Zeman second. Graham and Zeman second.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Double duty.
All right. Any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Say aye.
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 Okay. Now we look for motion to approve the disbursements list of approval from September 1st, 2020 to October 31st, 2020.
Zeman moves.
Sullivan second.
All right. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Any visitors? I see Belinda is here. Anybody else? No. I got nothing under old business. So let's just jump into new business then for 2021 fairs.
Mr. Chair and members, you'll see up on your screen, if you are attending via computer, some of the information that we also included as a part of your packet on page 9. And so this relates to fair. This is essentially the information that Sally and the team provided you at your last meeting or your last goal session to talk about fairs moving forward after the free fair abilities ends theoretically at the end of February in 2021. The memo is included in your packet as well that provides for a brief explanation of reminder of some of your discussion and a brief explanation of where we went. And so as I write at the bottom of that memo, I think there are a few questions that are worthwhile to ask yourself. And so I'm sure you all had the time to review those on the bottom of page 7 and on to page 8. And our goal today is, and you don't have to, I want to be really clear, there may be a plan for an additional meeting in December. We certainly have a meeting regularly scheduled in January, and so you don't have to provide for a decision related to fairs today. But if you do, it does provide us opportunity to ensure that we have this information out to your users in ample time for them to modify their plans, their schedule, their finances, their budget, etc. as we move forward. With that, I think I'm going to try and get out of the way and let Sally talk a little bit about where our previous discussion and what we've really kind of regurgitated for you. I think it's important to note, and Sally, help me remember, or Wayne, help me remember, I think option B is where you kind of settled. Now, option B changed a little bit during your meeting, and so Sally was making those adjustments during your last meeting as we were going forward, but we still wanted to bring you kind of the continuum of options, but option B is kind of where you landed at your last meeting. So Sally, I'll be quiet, and Mr. Chair or members, if there are any questions or anything else, we'll be ready to help as best as we can.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked at option B. At one point I had option B of St. Peter fairs reducing here to $3. So it'd be $3, $3. That ended up driving about a $26,000 loss for the transit, or covering the 20% that we need to do. So that would have to be covered out of reserves. Then the discussion went back to, well, if you're already charging $350, why would you lower St. Peter at all. So that's why it came back to bring St. Peter to 350, Sueur up to $3, students at 2, and then Kasota, we don't have a breakout of what they are, how many rides there are out of these 17,585. So if there's any Kasota rides, it would add $1. So if you took 500 off of here and then added into there, it add $500 in total additional revenue. Still puts us at a loss, or the reserve you'd have to use of 17,288.90 that we have to cover out of reserves. So it's not at a break even at a 20% that we have to cover 20% of the cost for the formula. So that's where we came up to try and rip off the Band-Aid a little bit, not quite get it 100% off. We're leaving it at about 90%. And then the next year in 2022, which we don't have to address yet, if you brought everybody up to $4, then you would build some reserves to help cover some bus costs and some other things in the future.
Sally, since this is such an important part of this discussion, if you could remind everybody approximately where we're at relative to reserves, that would be helpful.
Right now, we're sitting at about 75,000 in reserves.
So
we have a few years before we work our way down, but one of the problems is, we wanted 3 buses to be replaced. This year it's been taken down till we get 1, and then probably nothing in 22 or 23. So we're going to look at some major bus upgrades, or if we have to upgrade a bus in 22 or 23, we'd have to use reserves for that too. So that's some of the issues we're coming.
Sorry, one note on that reserve account. I believe you'll have another 100,000 or so going in after the 2019 audit. Is that correct? According to your records, Sally?
I don't think so. That was accounted for. That's in receivables.
Okay, I'll double check. My records for MRVT was like 170,000 in your reserve account after the 2019 audit, which obviously hasn't been completed.
Well, the 19 audit has been completed.
No, not the MnDOT.
Oh,
The MnDOT audit, sorry.
okay.
I know that, and so maybe a little bit of the confusion on that one is that we did have some resources that needed to be paid back, and I'm trying to think exactly how that worked, but we did have some that needed to be paid back.
That were over reserve, that were over payment, yeah.
Yep. But even at the 75 number, so if we have 175, that's fantastic. But if, let's just say we have 75, I mean, our discussion previously is that we feel good that from an operational perspective, the level of reserve that you need from a cash flow view is somewhere in that $40,000 range. That's really where we need to be from a cash flow perspective. So you can withstand a little bit of loss as long as it's not a long-term trend line and we see kind of a light at the end of the tunnel potentially.
Sally, this is Steve. I was trying to follow with you when you were talking there, but are you proposing then for starting January the 1st that option B would be St. Peter adults and all 4, Sueur adults and 4, and then students 250? Is that what you're proposing?
No, Steve, what I'm proposing is for starting, be really March 1st, because CARES is going to cover us through February right now at 100%. So starting March 1st of 2021, it'd be the $350, $3, $2, and $4.50. So $3.50 for St. Peter adults for everybody, $3 for Sueur, and then $2 for students. And $4.50
and then you're saying that based on that, you're projecting a loss of 17,300?
Correct.
Is that okay? I got it. All right. Why? Explain why you wouldn't be proposing the 4, 4, and 250, or is that looking at 22?
That's looking at 22. So that's sort of a step process to try and get up
Okay.
to a break even. So, and like I said, we ripped off part of the Band-Aid, not all of it for 2021. And then in 2022, we'd go the rest of the way. And that
All
we
right.
can change. We don't have to set 22 right now. That can change if funding or something else would change. We can make adjustments as we see funding change.
Todd, have you had any conversations with Gustavus relative to the upcoming year? Or is that kind of still pending?
Wayne has been the leader in that conversation with his contact person there. I've only had one discussion with the president, who at least to me has indicated they are certainly up in the air, but I would tell you that I believe it's unlikely during this current academic year that they're going to look for additional services on those Fridays and Saturdays like we provided in the past. I think the chances of that are very, very low.
So then, Sally, that 12,000, is that factoring that discussion in, or potential
Correct.
discussion that Wayne may have had?
Correct. That is not Gus Bus. We assume Gus Bus will cover their expense. We've broken out the drivers. We've taken the driver costs out of this, some bus cost, and so this is none. This is more like for people that rent it one-off, whether it's a wedding or some people just rent the bus for different options.
Okay.
So
All right,
if I
thank
can,
you.
to just explain that a little bit different way, we believe, based on the data that we have, that we are charging Gustavus at cost. And therefore, if we do not provide service, we don't have a cost, we don't have a revenue stream, so it's neutral relative to the calculations that Sally has here.
Okay, that I appreciate. Yeah, thanks. That helps me understand a little bit better then. Okay.
All right.
Sally, this is Marvin. I got one quick question. Do you know, or Todd, maybe it's for you, I don't know. Where are we at for rates for Sueur currently?
That was in the second one that we sent off right now for, where were we? I don't have it broken out between Sueur and St. Peter. I just have total rides.
What's the total fare currently in Sueur?
Currently, the fare in Sueur for what is termed general public in Sueur, that includes anyone from 6 all the way up to too old to ride, so my age. That fare currently is $2.25.
Okay.
That's the same rate that is charged a senior, defined as age 55 and above, 55 and above in St. Peter.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out, and I couldn't remember from our discussions as to why we didn't move that one to 350 as well, but that makes sense.
Yeah, we've really provided a stepped approach here, as Sally's indicated. You really had a couple of different, 3 primary goals. One is to try and move towards a unification of fares, so them being the same between the 2 communities. Second of which is to simplify it. At one stage we must have had like 8 or 9 different types of fares for different kinds of folks. And then third of which was, not the least of which, is to continue to make sure that you're covering your 20%.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do want to mention and give her an opportunity. Melinda and I had a discussion. Melinda, I think it was last Thursday or Friday. I can't remember exactly when it was, but about some of DOT's perspective, or certainly your perspective on what we're projecting here and where that goes. And so, we really trusted Melinda as being trusted counsel for us in viewing this, because she has a great perspective on what other transit systems are doing and where things are at and where the state is at. So I don't know, Melinda, I want to give you a chance to visit if you have anything you want to share.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really want to be cautious to be to clarify, this is my opinion. However, you know, you will see that you have you do have the full support of the state. Sorry, I'm trying to choose
Well,
my
and I don't
words
want to
here.
put you on the spot, Melinda. I don't want to put you on the spot
Yeah.
either. But our discussion
No,
was that, man,
yeah.
I want you to feel like you can visit. The board really wants to know how we're, you know, your perspective. We really trust your perspective on this stuff. So.
Thank you for that. So, I guess I'm concerned that, so MRVT is already one of the higher priced per ride transit systems in the state. So that's a concern. We definitely want to make sure to encourage ridership. So, but caveat would be not right now, you know, like with COVID. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to listen to the governor before we started meeting, but you know, we are getting back into a more confined space again. So as we look to come out of COVID, you know, that's up until that point, we're not looking to increase ridership. When we get to a more manageable place in society, we definitely want to look at how do we get people back on the bus. And so, you know, that does raise a concern for me in this consideration is, if we increase fares at any point in the near future, are we going to be encouraging ridership once we're ready to do that? So that's, you know, that's a cautionary. The budget and the numbers that we have here, it is legitimate information, so I don't want to discredit that in any way, shape, or form, but it is also projections. And so, you know, there's different ways that you can play with the data, not necessarily the data, but the realistic occurrence. So, you know, if we increase the fare structure, will that decrease rides? You know, that's a question. And over time, we have seen that generally is what happens. So from the state perspective, we have a commitment of affordable transit. And so I'm cautioning on that level. There are ways to also increase revenue potentially. You know, we could look to find more contracts. We could look to push more advertising on the buses. You're not in a unique situation in the state of Minnesota where the local government doesn't want to contribute or chooses not to contribute. So that's, you know, you're not alone in that. I also wanted to caution for anybody that isn't aware, Metro Transit put together a 25-cent increase last year, and the public outcry was almost outrageous. Like, people were out of their minds that they had a 25-cent increase. Now, granted that that's a much larger, more population dense area, but that would be a caution for your consideration. And again, I want to be clear. This is my opinion. It's not the state of Minnesota telling you what to do in any way, shape, or form. As Todd and I talked last week, I mean, you have to make this balance, and you all are committed to that decision. And so, you know, I and my department completely respects the position that you're in. That, you know, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip, so you have to make wise, frugal decisions, and we certainly have seen that with MRVT's handling and operations. So you've all done a great job. I think that MRVT has done a great job of coming in under budget in the past, and so that's, you know, that's a positive perspective. Yeah. So again, I was hesitant because I didn't want to sway the conversation too aggressively one way or the other, but I did think it was important to point those things out. And then just one other note, and I don't want to put too much promise in this, but for some reason, MRVT is in a different local match category than most of the other providers of your stature in Greater Minnesota. And so I have raised that conversation with my office to try to determine if we can't get MRVT adjusted to a 15% local match. versus a 20% match that you're looking at right now. And so I'm happy to report that those conversations have been started, but it does not look like our office will look to make that adjustment during this contract period. So should we choose to make that change, it wouldn't likely be in effect until 2022, since we did the 2-year contract period. So, and then the only other question I had, and this is not a mandatory requirement, was if you'll be looking to do public comment on this before you make an official change, should you choose to go that route.
So let me thank you, first of all, for being an advocate on our behalf relative to that percentage change, Melinda. We really appreciate that. I don't know how we got in the category that we are. We have just always been, both Sueur and St. Peter were in that same category beforehand. And so Melinda and I had this discussion as well. As some of you may recall, we're basing a little bit of our staff thought on the effort that we pursued for 5 years in St. Peter on doing just a route. And that does provide some opportunity for efficiency. And that route was priced half of what dial-a-ride was. And the reason we got out of that after 5 years is because our ridership continued to go down. People were willing to pay more, it seems, for the convenience of dial-a-ride as compared to the route, because I think we had a great route established and it was based on GIS data about pickup and drop-off information. I think there were, I don't know, anywhere from 12 to 15 different stops, Wayne, if I remember right. And we modified those on occasion, trying to make sure that we were covering the bases that we needed to cover. So we did not have a plan, Melinda, at least from a staff perspective, for a public comment portion or an ability for hearings or not. But certainly this group provides that opportunity for people to come as visitors. And also both city councils, Sueur and St. Peter, provide opportunity that's really readily available at their council meetings. I think people know we are MRVT, but honestly, I don't think that the folks that sit on this board are ever contacted as MRVT board members. They're typically contacted, if they get a contact at all, as being a council member in that community. So that's, I think, how people see them locally. But it's a fair point. We did not have planned a stop and a public review process for this. We did not have that planned.
And I think I bring that up as an opportunity to potentially avoid, some of the backlash that Metro Transit experienced, and they did do a public comment, and I think it was inevitable for their process, but sometimes that can help people feel a little more part of the process and understand the background of the decision, and so it's a little easier to accept. So yeah, it's just more of a, you may want to consider that if you choose to do the increases. One other note, and Todd was really eloquent with the conversation about your desire as a board to streamline and simplify, and I applaud that. I think that's great. In every effort, the better we can do to make it easy to understand, the better our passengers will respond to it. And I think especially those of us who have been out on the buses understand that the biggest challenge to getting people on the bus is helping them understand how to get on the bus. And so again, like simplifying that fare structure is just a really helpful way to make it easier for people to get on the bus. So that direction is great. I really appreciate that you're working towards that. So I think that was all I wanted to cover. I do appreciate. Thanks, Todd, again. My opinions, I don't want to sway. I don't want to sway the board, but I'm happy to answer questions or anything that I can do to be helpful.
Thanks, Melinda.
Melinda, I have one question for you this Wayne. I know when we talked, I believe it was Thursday last week, one of the things we talked about was cost per hour. And I believe you mentioned then that I think our cost per hour is somewhere in the vicinity of $55 an hour for operating, that is not out of sync with most of the other services around. It's relatively in the middle. I don't know, is that true?
It was on the higher end, but it's not out of the norm. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously factors like, fuel costs and housing and all those different things factor into what drives that up or down. And you know, and I do agree that MRVT has done a great job of being fiscally conservative. And so, so yeah, it is on the higher end, but it's not out of the range of norm. And I think is it closer to 50? I don't know if it was on one of these spreadsheets, but I have it in reporting elsewhere.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I mean, I think from a staff perspective, we stand open for questions. The information, again, starts on page 7 within your packet, and there's a resolution. Now, the resolution supposes the recommendation that staff is providing at that 350, 3.2, and 450. That's
Right.
based on your last discussion, and certainly that is it is at the pleasure of the board as to how those rates are set. The resolution really only includes setting fares for March 1st, 2021. And so you would have to take additional action at some point in the future if you wanted to change fares. They wouldn't expire. This resolution doesn't make them expire. It just keeps going until the next change, but it wouldn't be effective until that March 1st of 2021.
And one question on that, Melinda. Do they believe the CARES funding will last through February?
Yeah, we are committed unequivocally through the end of February at 100%. And then the other conversation with that is for systems that are not going through all of that federal portion of that funding, there's a possibility of extending the 100%, but again, that's one of those we won't know till we get closer, and so I don't really want to raise hopes on that, but it is a possibility. We're
Okay.
also watching to see what Congress does with the HEROES Act, because there is some transportation funding proposed in that package to add to what we've done with CARES Act, but again, we won't know until we actually see that.
Okay, I just heard, you know, some of the money would run out, so I was just wondering if we're on track for at least through February, so.
Yeah, MRVT has done great. I think, well, definitely through February, and I think, you know, again, depending on how they look at extending that, you are in good shape.
Excellent.
So, Mr. Chair, we stand ready for questions or action or wherever you guys want to take this. We're happy to follow your lead.
Anybody have any questions or anything? So we could adopt the fares as in option B?
Yes, you certainly can, or if you don't want to make a motion at this point, you want to wait until a future meeting or establish a future meeting, that is certainly at the pleasure of the board.
If, Mr. Chair, if you're looking for someone to, I didn't quite understand the essence of the question, I guess, but if you're looking for someone to move the resolution that appears on page 10, I will make that, I will move that we accept the resolution with those rates, $3.50, $2, $4.50.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Oh, this is Steve Grams, Mr. Chair. I'll second that motion.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Any more discussion regarding that? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It passed, yeah, Todd.
Mr. Chair, if I can, just because of the rules that we have to follow being virtual here, we do need to do a roll call. I apologize.
Okay.
I should have said that at the beginning.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, so if I can, I'll do the roll call. You just, whenever everybody's ready.
Okay.
All right. Sullivan,
Aye.
Grams,
Mr. Grams, aye.
Zeman,
Aye.
Huntington.
Aye.
All right, thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
No problem. All right. I guess we took
And
care of
Mr.
that.
Chair, just as a
Yes.
follow-up, I know we have great communication with Melinda, so if something changes on any of these fronts, whether it relates to CARES money or HERO dollars or some change in classification, we'll keep you in the loop, and certainly you have a meeting scheduled before this takes effect. And so you do have the opportunity to make a change if that might either in a small way or significantly impact where you think you want rates to be or where your bottom line is at.
Okay. Sounds great. Let's go to reports then. Let's go to the operational manager's reports.
So as we mentioned, Sandy's in a bus right now and Wayne is here, again, short end of the stick on that deal. But I'll let Wayne talk a little bit about the 2021 bus purchase and where we're at with that.
Thank you. I believe you probably recall that we actually submitted an application to replace 3 buses. At the recommendation of MnDOT, we applied for as many as fit the criteria. In the process, at that point, we were looking at those buses being funded at a 90-10, 10% local funding for the buses. We've been approved for 1. And that bus will be replaced, as I understand reading the information from the state, that will be fully funded by state and federal dollars. So there will be no local share on that bus. I would expect the order process will begin sometime around March or April. If it's true to form, a lot of contracts information has to get dealt with by the state before we can even sign. And then we'll begin as soon as that process can. So the good news is it's 100% funded. The bad news is we got 1. So we'll manage the mileage on those that we have, and we'll try to extend their service life as much as we can with good maintenance.
All right, thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
The next one is one that I'll talk about, 1B, Operation Manager Report under B. As you know, the board has given staff authority relative to the number of part-timers and full-timers that we have on staff. We have reviewed the data, and I provided approval for a hire of an additional full-time driver. This will not be more hours of service for us. This is really trying to address some of the personnel issues that we have, covering the hours of service that we already have in place. As you may know from previous discussions, your costs on that, which is within the bounds of the budget, is approximately $10,000 to $11,000 overall in that process, depending on how things work out with any future changes in funding from the state of Minnesota. We continue to struggle with part-time drivers and filling all the service hours that we have need for. And so our belief is that we can use this to help us fill those less attractive hours as we go forward. We are also currently advertising for additional part-time drivers. We have some folks that are a little bit more seasonal in nature that go south over the winter. Our need for transit drivers doesn't stop in the winter. In fact, in some respects, it grows seasonally. And so that's an important factor for us. But so we're in the process for those 2 positions currently. And then the last one, item number C, or letter C, I'll ask Wayne to talk about route match pay name. And I know we didn't provide a memo on this, but this is a fun one that you might want to think about and consider for a future meeting. And so Wayne, would you mind introducing that a little bit more?
As the board's probably aware, we've been implementing route match software for scheduling and keeping the buses, communication between the buses and dispatch. One of the modules that is part of that software is called RM Pay. And with RM Pay, the hope is that we can do away with needing to print and maintain and inventory tickets. Passengers will automatically have an account established within Route Match's system that they can pay into to debit fares over time out of that account. So a given passenger could walk on a bus, drop $50 in the fare box. the driver enter that amount into the software, and it will stay as a credit, and the passenger can use off that for daily fares. So that module is called RM Pay. As part of the marketing of that, we are allowed to use our own naming system for that. So instead of RM Pay, it could be MRVT Pay or some other name chosen locally, and then that would be used on the website and the advertising that goes along with rolling this out when it becomes fully functional. So I think it's at this stage, the question is, do we want to name it? Do we want to leave it as RM Pay? How do we want to go into the future with it? So that was something I learned over the last week or two, and kind of took me by surprise. I've always assumed it was going to be RM Pay.
So Wayne, the big point in that is that, man, if the board wants to come up with a very flashy name or something less flashy, that is certainly open for you to do. We don't need to know that right away, but probably before the first of the year, we would want to figure out a name. Maybe we could do it in January. I know we could have a tentative meeting in December, and that could be something that you discuss, or we could bring some ideas back, but maybe you have some ideas right now you want to share. Or it can be RM Pay, which stands for Route Match Pay, which most customers will have no idea what that is. But so anyway, that's why you're bringing it to your attention.
This is Zeman.
Yes, Zeman.
Yeah, I would like to think about it a little bit.
Yep.
I don't think it needs to be decided right now, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, I agree with you. I suggest that we wait until, think about it for a month, and I'm going to propose we have a meeting in December anyway. So come back with some ideas for December. Sally, did you say something?
Just for the finance team and watching these credit card payments come in and the rest, we need something that's a little, so we know what it means. So I would say worst case would be MRVT, so we can look at all the credit card payments coming in. So we know that it's not MVAC or whatever it happens to be as we're looking through the account statements. Because we've got a bunch coming through Paymentus and some of the other ones, so just keeping track.
Okay.
Wayne, is this like a name that would be used for marketing? Okay, so you want something snappy that's easily understandable potentially?
Yes.
Melinda Pay has been brought up internally.
I'll take it.
So if we don't mind, we could table that discussion until next month, if that's okay with everybody. Just think of an idea, and we'll put it on the agenda for next month's list of things to talk about, and hopefully start all fresh new in 2021.
Mr. Chair, one other thing that we'll do is we will visit or ask a question related to the marketing person that DOT has been providing for us. And maybe the state has been thinking about this, and there's a name that would be universally known or recognized for all of the greater Minnesota systems. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, but we should ask that question.
Yep, I agree. If you could check that out for us, that'd be great too.
We will.
MRVT Easy Pay.
Oh, that'll work.
I will write that on our list, and
all right, hold that off.
Remember, next time we got a good start.
All right.
Give it up to a mayor.
Yeah.
Okay. So if that's okay with everybody, we think about it. Then next month we'll bring it up. So we're at the compliance manager report.
Okay. Primarily activity over the last month, other than filling in some some hours on the bus, has been dealing with fine tuning, I guess, the workings of the route match software. As the board may remember, I believe we are the first attempt by route match to combine 3 transit systems in one database. And the 3 transit systems are Brown County, True Transit, and MRVT. So as this has worked through, they have found some issues that they have not been finding in other rollouts with single systems in the database. The 3 most recent one that has been making them scratch their heads is the GPS. Excuse me a second. Got to turn the radio down, sorry. Has to do with mileage that is generally automatically picked up by the tablets, and as passengers are boarded and get off the bus, automatically tabulated for revenue miles, which we report to MnDOT. For whatever reason, we are losing the ability for the GPS, and they've been scratching their head a lot trying to figure out how that's working. We've got one bus in Sueur that has not updated mileage in over a week. So the driver has to manually enter mileage each time they pick up and drop off passengers. And we've got 2 buses here in St. Peter that are intermittent. There'll be several hours here or there, or maybe a half a day where they don't pick up the mileage. So they're working on that one. The other problem is the rollout of RMPay and the difficulty with getting the correct fare amounts into the tablet. It will not pick that dollar amount up off the computer system. My understanding in visiting with Route Match, they're not having this problem in other systems that are using it. So they're speculating it has something to do with how they've merged the 3 databases. They're working on it, and they have told us that they will have a solution soon. I keep asking when soon is. I'm not getting a definitive answer. My guess is give them a month, and I think they'll have it pretty well tabulated. As of now, with not charging fares with the CARES Act funding, it's not critical. But the one advantage we have the sooner it rolls out is that account that gets created is created once a person rides, and their 0 fare currently is credited into the system. That creates their account. So the sooner that is tabulating and creating those accounts for more passengers, the faster we have that database built for people to deposit their funds. So that's one of the advantages, and I'd hope to get it going already. We started, or Route Match started to try rolling this out already in July. With some vacations, we had an operations manager over in New Ulm that was out on a medical leave. So there are a couple of things have gotten in there. We've made attempts, I think 3 or 4 times with updated firmware, updated applications in the system, and it's not meshing, and they're just working on it. So we're hoping that'll be resolved here very quickly. The other nagging problem that is in the system is that the operations manager, so Sandy's computer up in Sueur, after St. Peter's IT tech, Leon, has been through it, done I don't know how many different attempts to correct the problem. Sandy's computer locks up when she tries to add rides fairly regularly. And as a backup dispatcher, it puts her in a real bind. One day it locked up 3 different times, just while she was backing up Jody and adding rides. It's gotten a little bit better. I had a conversation with Leon, I believe it was yesterday, either yesterday morning. Yeah, it must have been yesterday. It wasn't Friday. And he's got a plan to take a new computer and totally load from scratch, because Route Match seems to think it is something in the setup of the actual box that sits under Sandy's desk. So Leon said he's going to build it up from scratch. He hopes that will be done within a week. And if that solves it, that's great. Otherwise, it has to be on Route Match's end. At this point, there's a little finger pointing going on back and forth about where the issue lies. Sandy has said it's getting better, but it's still there. Once it rears its head, she'll try to add a ride. It locks up the Route Match software. Computer itself continues to work in Microsoft Office and other things that she's working with, but you can't do anything within Route Match without shutting the computer down completely and rebooting each time. So those are the three things that are kind of nagging out there that I've been working on, making very pointed questions to some people in Atlanta, and they are working on it. So it's probably the primary thing we've been working on. We are shorthanded, and one of the drivers that we had for about a year and a half was filling in quite a few of the evening or the 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. shifts over here. He resigned as of the end of October, and that's kind of along with a work comp injury that's keeping a driver out, putting us behind over here pretty good. So I spend a bunch of time in the bus, and I guess that's about all I have for the compliance manager, unless someone has some questions.
Anybody have any questions for Wayne? Other than thank you, Wayne, for picking up the slack, that's for sure.
Thank you. Well, Sandy has been filling in also in Sueur. We've got one of the drivers in Sueur is on a long-term medical leave. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We're up to administration reports.
Mr. Chair and members, as you know, we sent out as a separate attachment some information related to utilization and how that's looking on a month-by-month basis on a 2019 to a 2020 comparison. So if you didn't have a chance to look at that, I think it's worth your time and energy to look at it. I think it's important to note where we're at, and certainly for 20 and 20, the continued growth that we've seen in utilization, even during times of COVID, we continue to see utilization. I think there are a couple things that contribute to that. One of which is the cleaning regimen that the team goes through related to buses, requiring masks when we clean, how we do that. And so I think that's gone very well. And I think just the need that continues to be within our two communities for this kind of service. The people that use MRVT, for the most part, need MRVT. It's how they get to the doctor, to the dentist, to the hairdresser, to the grocery store. It's their primary transportation. So again, we're fortunate to be able to provide that. So if you have questions about that, let us know if you would like. Sally, do we have anything else that we want to make sure that we cover as a part of the administrative report?
No, I think we've covered everything, so.
All right, thanks, Sally.
Okay.
Oh, Wayne has.
Wayne, yes.
Yeah, I just want to add a little perspective to those ridership numbers. In 2019, September and October, you have to realize that those numbers included Gustavus rides from when we were running Gus Bus. So the total number of Gustavus rides in September of 2019 was 2,400. If you take that off the 59, our totals in 2020 are looking fairly good. The October number for Gustavus rides was just over 2,000. So there, if you reduce or add that, depending upon how you want to look at it, to the totals, it adds a little perspective there in reality of comparison. So.
Thank you for that, Wayne. That's a great point.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Wayne. Okay. Well, before we adjourn, I was mentioning at the top before the meeting, and I mentioned it also in the meeting, that I would like to schedule a meeting in December to go for that name and a couple other things I'm sure we can discuss. As many of you know or don't know, I did not run for city council. My term was up. Is it up at the end of December? Due to my health situation, I chose not to run this year. So I will be leaving the board at the end of the year. So I would like to have another meeting before and clear up whatever we need to in 2020 to send it off in its merry way in 2021. So Todd and I talked about the date would be on December 8th. Is that correct there, Todd?
Yeah, normally you're meeting on the second Tuesdays of those months, and so that would be the 8th in December.
So if that's okay with everybody, I would like to have a meeting on December 8th.
From a
Sounds
staff
good from here.
perspective, make that happen.
Okay, excellent. I appreciate that. Thank you. And work on that name. And you too, Mr. Mayor. We think we got the good name.
I'll fine tune it.
Fine tune it. Yes. Probably put your name in it or something.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. If anything else, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
This is Steve Grams, Mr. Chair. So moved. I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Well, then I'll see you guys all on December 8th.
All right, thanks
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks
care,
for
everyone.
being with us.
Bye now.